All right, guys. Today on the show, we have a man who has overcome addictions to porn and sex, as well as later, as he'll mention, to opioids and cocaine. Since then, he's transformed his life, winning 3 Emmy Awards, producing an award-winning documentary short film, becoming financially independent, and meeting the love of his life. He now helps men reach their full potential, teaching them how to quit porn forever and retrain their brain for energy, clarity, and focus. Without further ado, guys, welcome to the show, Bill Ranshaw. Bill, thanks for slowing down with us, man.
Awesome. Thank you, Mitch. I really appreciate it. Thank you for that intro. That definitely sums it up. And I am excited to share my story today and hopefully connect with, if it's just one person that connects with my story and can maybe change the direction of their future,
Yep.
man, I've done my job. So I might even get emotional when I chat. And I've learned
Love
to do
it.
that.
Let the
That's
tears flow,
a
brother.
position of strength. I get so
Love
emotional.
it. Love
But
it.
I love talking about the subject too. So as we get into it, the goal is to make it lighthearted and also make it something that most everybody can talk about. So,
Awesome. Well, first of all, I think I just want to acknowledge it is, I think, an issue that is not talked about a lot. So I just want to acknowledge you for coming out and speaking on this and, sharing this message. I'm sure that's not an easy thing to do. And
yeah.
I would imagine there's a lot of men out there who are suffering almost in silence through, porn addiction,
Hmm.
or any type of addiction.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be porn,
Yeah.
but with that said, man, can you bring us a little bit through your journey to where you're today? I know I mentioned a little bit of it, the Coles notes in the intro, but if you can just bring our audience through your
Yeah.
journey to getting here today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to make it brief. And if anybody wants a lot more detail, they can go to my YouTube channel. I probably got 2 or 3 videos that really go into depth, like hour-long discussions around my detailed journey around porn addiction. But it really started back, I'm going on 49 years old, and I started watching porn somewhere around the ages of 9 and 11, which would have been obviously, the mid to early 80s.
Hmm.
And back at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of access to porn. You might be able to find a magazine or some old video or something. But where it kind of really took off for me, my dad had purchased one of those giant satellite dishes that go in the backyard.
Hmm.
And, at an early age, I had access to what was then considered probably some hardcore porn.
Hmm.
And that's where we can get into, which scares me today, because the access that the young men have today and frequency of men today and porn use is exponential to what it was to me. And I can talk about the destruction it caused in my life. And so just compound that to men today and young men of what it can do to their future. And so a lot of conversations that I have around this is really like reaching out to young men in their 20s and say, use me as an example. You might think you're exempt from porn because when you're young, you feel like you can do both. You're watching porn, but you still have a lot of sexual arousal toward, and you don't have a problem with that. But as you get later in life, like any other addiction, smoking or alcohol, you're going to notice the effects. And it was devastating in my life as far as what it's done. But let me walk through it a little bit. So I started watching porn around 9 to 11. And that was my only outlet until I was 19, which was the first time I had sex. And the first time I had sex, it was with a random girl we met at a bar. Typical scenario, came home, and it was the most unfulfilling experience probably of my life. I
Wow.
didn't orgasm. I was in a room. Everybody was drunk. My friends were passed out on the floor. So not your ideal situation that you would probably want to have.
Not exactly a romantic setting, right?
No. And I remember like this is just weird. This is awkward. And again, about, a couple minutes in, I'm realizing, I'm not really enjoying this. And like, who is this girl? It was just very challenging. So I didn't orgasm. And, I chalked it up to the fact that maybe this is just a first time fluke. And that's how first times are. People, hey, you're nervous. That's how it is. It's just ice. It wasn't a fluke. That actually was the rest of my life for the next 30 some years. And up until just about 4 years ago or 3 years ago, I can count on one hand how many times I orgasmed from sex. And so my brain from an early age was trained for sexual arousal from porn and orgasm through porn and masturbation. And it got to the point where that actually became uninteresting in my early 20s. I still watched porn. It was the only way I could orgasm. But then it led to a life of sex addiction as well, where the porn wasn't as interesting. So I found very creative ways online. Thank God for the internet. But because of the internet, it became very easy to find women that wanted to hook up. Later in life, I realized, for me, it was a lack of self-esteem, lack of showing vulnerability and hiding, where I would find women kind of in the same shoe with a lot of maybe low self-esteem, self-worth, that were looking for validation through sex. And so I closed myself off to intimacy at an early age. And as it progressed, I would do, and porn has many manifestations with men throughout their life. It takes many different directions. And for me, again, it led into a sex addiction where I was hooking up multiple times a week, multiple times a day. And it kind of became, it was just sport. It was fun. But the one thing that it wasn't connecting with the other person. And so the way porn developed in my brain was that it created a disconnect between sexual passion, arousal, and sexual intimacy with real intimacy and connection. And as my life went, it just went farther and farther. And so how it started showing up later in my life was anytime, let me back that up. I also had a lot of self-limiting beliefs, which was if I really show interest in a girl, then they lose interest. So I would show indifference to girls. I was always closed off. But anytime I really opened myself up, all of a sudden somebody's breaking up with me or whatever it might be. So I just reinforced the negative behaviors around a relationship. And sex is keeping people at arm's distance. I would never want to get married. I would argue that that was the worst thing in the world anybody would ever want to do. Why would you want to do that? So that's kind of the direction it took, is that I couldn't connect in a intimate relationship. Not to say I couldn't connect intimately with someone, but the sexual arousal and how it showed up in my late 30s and 40s was when I would get into a relationship that I maybe was really attracted to somebody, thought it could go somewhere, sexual dysfunction came in full force. And a lot of guys get what's called porn-induced erectile dysfunction, which means you can't get erections, and it's because of the porn use. And you're so used to constant stimulus through porn that in a normal situation, there's just nothing arousing about it. The cues are not connected. And so the normal cues that people would have growing up, such as, kissing and touching and conversation and all those type of things, did not get wired in my brain. And what got wired in my brain was I walk into an empty room, nobody's home, there's a computer. That's where sexual arousal started to begin for me, because I could have this outlet. And so again, I go back to the point where sex became something that in my brain was alone, not just physically, but mentally.
Right.
That there was no connection with anybody with porn. So when I would become in a sexual encounter later in life, it was, again, the sexual arousal and passion wasn't there. It didn't make sense. The only form of intimacy that I had growing up was with family and friends, where you had that real closeness and understanding of people. So when I got into a relationship with a girl, that's how it started to feel. It's like, this feels like family. Sex doesn't belong here. This is odd. This is out there. That's something I do by myself or with somebody that I'm not connected with. And it really got to the point for me where I just became depressed. Really isn't the word, but a lot of people get severely depressed around it. I think maybe underlying low-lying depressed, but numbness is really how it reared itself to me. Is nothing was really that enjoyable. Nothing was terribly bad, but I was just existing. And where the whole thing hit rock bottom for me, I had lost my dad in 1996 from cancer, my mom in 2005 from a heart attack. But in 2007, I lost a godson at 7 years old to leukemia. And that's where I just realized I was numb to everything. And what woke me up to it is I saw a special on, it might have been A&E or one of those channels. And since it's always a hot topic, these shows do really well, but it was like the mind of a serial killer. And That's where I might creep a lot of people out when I say that. But the common denominator was this feeling of numbness.
Yeah.
And when people get to this point, they can become either homicidal or suicidal.
Wow.
And I thought, man, I'm not there, but I see that road. I can see how life can show up for somebody where they get to that point of feeling so numb that they want to just feel something or take action or do something, which later in life has really helped me have a strong sense of compassion for someone, regardless of the things that they do. I can't always condone it or dismiss it, but I can say, yeah, I can see how life showed up for somebody in such a way that they can do the things that they do. So that was a piece of it. So it was around 2008, 2009, where I really started self-discovery, looking at myself and realizing all the things that I'd done to myself. So it was a lot of self-help courses and moving forward and connecting with people. But the one thing that I learned later is, hey, this is maybe up to about 6 years ago. I've read all the books, I've watched all the videos, I've done the seminars, but I'm like, I'm still not there. Like, what is wrong? And so I had a friend maybe 7 years ago, finally say, hey, do you watch porn? I said, absolutely, man. I mean, sure, as much as the next guy. Yeah, who doesn't? And he said, well, maybe you should consider what that maybe that's doing something to you. I said, I said, porn's healthy. It relaxes me before a date. If I need to go to bed, I argued every which way for it. Well, nothing changed. And it was a short time later where, I just considered it. And, as I learned more, he was right. And when I gave into that thought of porn is causing all these issues in my life, that's kind of where it really started to snowball as far as a transformation. I'm trying to think what other areas you want me to talk about around this, because there's so many different areas on my personal journey, or how it affects man and things like that. So,
dude, that was amazing. As far as bringing us through the journey, what a journey, by the way. And I think there's a lot of things you said there that I found very interesting. And the first was, you said that from this porn addiction, it closed you off from intimacy. You got to a point where you're closed off from intimacy. I'm super curious. How did you go back so you got to this point where you couldn't feel intimacy in a relationship with a woman.
Yeah.
And now I would imagine, you can, is that fair to say? Maybe not. Maybe you're still working on it in some ways. But
great question. There's still things that I work through. It's really finding the tools, and there's a distinction where I will say around intimacy as opposed to sexual desire, arousal, and passion.
Yep.
I never got to the point where a lot of men, and I can list like some of the things that porn does to you. It decreases your motivation in activities where you don't find hobbies interesting anymore. You become bored, you become unmotivated, you can become irritable, you can become angry. You don't bond and connect with people. There's depression, erectile dysfunction. So there's many different areas of your life where the side effects of porn show up, not just sexual, but in all areas of your life. And where it is that disconnection from people.
Wow.
And the reason that is, if I go into the science aspect of it, because this is how I had to redo it, is understanding the brain science behind porn and other addictions, is what is it really doing to your brain? And so I've got a course that I work with men, and it starts off with really understanding that part of the brain, and it focuses on dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. And there's a few other neurotransmitters that are involved with that. And understanding how our brain is wired and how it builds what's called neuroplasticity, meaning association to experiences. And I had to understand, how did I get to the point, and how did porn cause that? Now, how do I break that chain and rebuild? And so that was the main thing, is really having to cut everything off. And once you stop porn, then your brain will begin to start finding new ways for arousal. But it really has to do with levels of dopamine. And dopamine is it's a neurotransmitter. A lot of people confuse it, like for sex, for example, that it's the neurotransmitter that's released at an orgasm. That's a misunderstanding. Dopamine is actually, other people call it the motivation drug,
Okay.
meaning once you have an association of pleasure or high reward to something, the next time you have a cue or a trigger for that, that's when dopamine begins to release greater and
So it's
greater
like
and
an
greater.
anticipation for this
Yes.
thing, this reward.
Yep, exactly.
Mm.
And so understanding that porn, along with some other drugs, the level of dopamine that gets released once you get triggered is so much greater than other triggers that you have in your life.
Mm.
That's why everything else becomes so unmotivating, whether it
Right.
be sports, activities, hobbies, passions, because they will, once you've experienced a massive amount of porn, you're always trying to reach that level of dopamine to keep up with it.
And
And
nothing
so
compares.
nothing compares. So you become bored and depressed. And
Wow.
so you have to break that link of feeding that dopamine,
Mm.
and where the other levels begin to, you reset your baseline and the other levels begin to rise, if
Gotcha.
that makes sense.
Totally makes sense.
But what generally happens is, in this phase where people do that, they'll hit what's called a flat line. If you can get to the point where you break the cycle of watching porn, you will get to the point, which can become depressing for a lot of men, is I have no sexual arousal.
Mm.
But the good news is, if they can get through it and understand it, and I teach a lot of techniques how to expedite that period of how do you speed that up? Because what that's doing, that is your brain working, trying to find new pathways.
Right.
Like, what am I? Okay, I have a deficit of this motivation, which is where the depression sits in. How can I refill that? And there's a lot of techniques that around that. One is actually working on increasing serotonin, because serotonin and oxytocin are the neurotransmitters that actually are released at a time of an orgasm or high reward. And so working in ways to increase those and
Mm.
decrease dopamine, that can kind of help reset, in being complicit and deliberate about what you're doing with your brain and your body, your nutrition, the media, the content that's coming into your brain.
Mhm.
All of that you can begin to be proactive around setting up new neural pathways into your brain. And so that was the biggest one for me, was reassessing and linking sexual arousal and passion to an
Ah,
intimate relationship.
right.
And again, today I've made great strides in it.
Yeah.
And that's where my research continues today, because there's still areas that I know I can improve personally on that.
Mm.
And I've
It's
found
a
it amazing.
process, I would imagine.
Yeah, it is. And understanding again that you're not broken, that's not just you. That was the biggest one, is really reaching out into the world and
Mm.
being vulnerable and sharing yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm probably going to jump all over the map here, because
Oh, all good, my man. That's how we do
another,
it.
yeah, another reason why a lot of people turn to porn. There's a couple ways that how it shows up in your life. And again, I really like talking about the science behind it, because once you understand that, then you can reverse engineer it. But when we're young, our brains are developing, like the limbic system of our brain, which is where you start to understand and gain baselines for fear and anxiety, depression, stress, and all those type of things.
Mhm.
So that's why kids are always so emotional, because they have no baseline. So
Ah,
everything is depressing, or everything's really exciting,
yeah.
or everything, you have anxiety around all of it. Well, is what happens is porn, and this also happens with alcohol or any other drugs, but
Mm.
I speak primarily to behavioral type as opposed to substance abuses.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and when you are watching porn as a young man, and you're also experiencing levels of stress, fear, anxiety, depression, it's weird that now the outcome to porn and an orgasm gets linked to those associations, those negative associations.
Mm.
So what do I mean by that? That means moving forward in life, your brain will actually put you in stressful, anxiety, depressional situations, because subconsciously it's expecting a high reward of an orgasm for porn.
Oh, wow.
Does that make sense?
So your body's almost trying to self-regulate. It wants that reward. And so it strives out those states where you're feeling depressed or feeling anxious so
Yep.
that it gets that reward.
Yep. Yeah. And yeah, so that was an eye opener for me, going, wow. And so that goes back to my point of being where I've tried everything in the world, but it doesn't seem to be working. And I also chat a lot of people. It's funny because I get a lot of trolls on Instagram, and
Right.
people think because I'm talking about no porn, they think I'm a freaking pussy, or that I'm just lackluster, don't stick up for myself. And
Right.
it's fun talking down the trolls, because don't tell me what it hasn't done to my life.
Yeah.
And but it really is. So I lost my train of thought on that. So understanding that you can rewire your brain of knowing that these stressful situations are putting you in that.
Right.
And so the other thing, another reason why men, attract towards porn, or why it becomes so addictive, is as men, we are trained, and you talk about this a lot in your podcast, and I think there's a couple in particular that I liked, was we're taught as men to not be vulnerable.
Right.
There's buzzwords around that. I talk about it's great to be vulnerable in a stance of confidence, but not being a victim.
Right.
But why is porn so conducive to this? Because porn and masturbation and orgasm, it's also called PMO. You'll hear that in a lot of chat groups. PMO, porn, masturbation, orgasm. NoFap is another term used widely, which is a lot of people have heard, which is the term for masturbation. And it was named because of the sound it makes, supposedly, when you're
fat. Oh, is that right? Yeah. I never knew that. Wow.
Yeah, that's why it has that name. But so if we have instances where we're feeling anxious about being vulnerable or showing emotion or anything like that, porn will shut that down. The second you have an orgasm, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to worry about connection or anything. So that's another reason why we fall into that. Because we have either fears of vulnerability or emotions or feelings, and porn shuts down that connection. You don't have to worry about it. So those are reasons why it becomes so linked moving forward.
That's why it's such a widespread problem right now. I don't know any of the stats, but I know it is a significant issue in society with especially seen in the rates of erectile dysfunction and men's sexual performance as they get older. That's super interesting how it goes, how the predominant kind of paradigm in society where men cannot feel vulnerable is fed by this addiction to porn. It's just this vicious cycle where the porn continues to close them off, and get them deeper into that. And so I would assume, Bill, that by reversing this, by stopping this, cutting off this cycle of addiction to porn, that's just the first step, I would imagine, logically, in opening up and being able to feel intimacy, feel vulnerability as a man.
Yeah, that was absolutely the key for me. And then for me, the first step was the being the vulnerable aspect of it. I was fortunate to be part of a big group of men in Arizona that I had a great group of friends. We would meet monthly and just talk about men's issues and things like that.
Love it. Yeah.
And I was in a long distance relationship that had lasted about a year, but it was about 3 months in where this started to happen, where I was totally in love with this girl, but erectile dysfunction set in. And so the way I showed up in a relationship really changed, where I would always make sure we were either staying up late, watching movies. I would do everything I could to stay away from it.
I would imagine there's shame involved in that, right?
Yeah. Shame, embarrassment, feeling that you have to perform in a certain way, all these different levels of stress that come upon yourself. And so we finally broke up in this relationship after a year. I told a lot of friends, I said, well, it's because it was a long distance. On the surface, I blamed it on long distance. But I reached out to this group of 30 men in an email. It was, I guess, like a Jerry Maguire moment where, it was a mission statement, not a memo.
Right.
And I just said, here's what I'm dealing with. I said, I don't know what to do. I'm just reaching out. And I think I've attributed this to porn because there's a video a friend had sent me. And I'm just saying, it was a completely vulnerable email. And I think I've got that in some documents somewhere that I could share with people of like, here's the email that I wrote. And out of the 30 guys, I would say maybe 25 of them reached back out to me.
Wow.
And said, holy shit, Bill. Wow. I mean, you've been a great friend, but now, I mean, I feel so connected to you. And
Oh,
I've experienced
awesome.
certain things in my life around
Yeah.
this. So I was immediately rewarded by
Hmm.
vulnerability, by sharing my story. And again,
Right.
not a woe is me and victimhood. It's like,
Yeah.
here's me. And if
Right.
anybody else
Right.
experience, I'm looking to see if anybody else can I connect with. And so that's where my journey really began of to where I'm at today. And once I did that,
And
I
that,
was,
that sorry to cut you off, but that's probably where you felt for the first time. I would imagine I'm not broken. I'm not alone.
yeah,
You know, I've got
yeah.
people behind me here. I'm not a crazy person.
Yeah, that is absolutely it. And so I tell men who are dealing with this, you absolutely are not alone. Anybody can reach out to me. Search YouTube. YouTube, I found, is the best source of it. Other parts of social media, I feel like can be very toxic around the conversation.
Yeah.
But YouTube is there are a lot of people out there, and you realize you are not alone.
Right.
There's a handful of coaches that are out there dealing with this and dealing it from different aspects. But where my stance is on it is that I'm not on a soapbox preaching don't watch porn.
Hmm.
It's not my job to convince you that porn is bad for you.
Right.
I
Right.
mean that's an undertaking that I'm probably not going to be able to do. But my stance is if you have tried everything else in your life to get to that
Yeah.
level of success or that level of happiness and bliss, and you've tried everything, just examine what porn is doing in your life if you have not examined that piece of it.
Right.
And once you can do that, you can crack, okay, here's an area in my life where if I stop this, I can gain greater connection with people,
Hmm.
with coworkers. When I started doing that, that's, my business, I took off with work, and my direction really started opening up. But again, by all means, it wasn't cured, but I at
Right.
least had a
Right.
path. Oh, okay, here's a vein that I can go down to and start researching.
Right. Right. You're on that path. Love that. So you're not preaching absolutely no porn. You're not out there saying, guys, don't look at this ever. But you're just saying
Yeah.
bring awareness to this area of your life because of
Yeah.
your experiences that you've gone through and you've seen how it's affected you personally.
Hmm.
And so now you're just encouraging men out there to bring awareness to this. Maybe it's an
Hmm.
issue in your life, maybe it's not, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I mean, I have my personal opinion that yes, it's absolutely not good for you, that no matter what you think it's doing
right,
damage to
right,
yourself, but you have to find that out on your own. You really
totally.
do. Cause I have so many people and couples saying it enhances our sex life, or I use it again to relax and all these things. Like, great, short term, you might be getting a bump.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
bad in relationships. And I also do not, because a lot of people come to me asking me about if you want to get on the political side of shutting down porn sites. And that's not my fight. I don't
Right.
pick that up. There's a lot of people out there doing it.
Yeah.
But I will absolutely agree that it increases and is correlation to sex trafficking. It correlates and promotes drugging of women and sexual rape on camera, pedophilia, and sex with young
Yeah.
kids. Again, that's not my fight, because that's not something that I personally experienced from it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Mine is, I know what it did to me, and if you've gone through remotely the same things I can
Hmm.
help you get through that.
Ah, yeah.
That's what it is. And
Yeah.
so I can't take on the weight of the world of everybody, but here, let me share
No.
my story and let me help you with all the tools and techniques that I've learned to get through that. But it's just really self-awareness around it.
Love it. Well, I love your approach on your mission here and how you're tackling this massive, massive problem.
Yeah.
Um, so, Bill, for anyone out there who's sitting at home, they're listening to this, they're going, "Oh yeah, I look at porn like quite often, but I don't think I have a problem. Or do I have a problem? I don't know. Like
Yeah.
what? How many times or what? How do you know if you're addicted or if you have a problem? What would
Great.
you encourage a man to look at to know
Yeah.
that?
Great question. Well, an addiction is anything that, and this is the hard part because people don't want to associate anything negative, but once you learn that something can or is possibly having a negative effect in your life, but you still continue to do it and don't stop. So
Yep.
if you don't think it's an issue in your life, the first thing I say is, great, don't watch porn for a week.
Mhm.
Do you have that control over yourself to not watch it for a week? If you can make a week, can you do 2 weeks? Can you do a month?
Right.
And if you can't get through a month without watching porn in some instance, it has a hold on you. You don't have control over it. And then
Right.
start understanding that there's all these veins that is what it's doing. It's like got its fingers inside, and it is affecting these areas. A lot of it is the brain fog. It shows up again as anger. It shows up as combativeness. So if you feel like you have any of these issues in your life to where maybe you can be short-tempered, if you're maybe bipolar, where sometimes you're feeling really anxious and happy, or other times you're just really angry, these are all areas in life that porn is affecting your life, and it's rearing itself. So
Right,
that's
right.
kind of the first phases that I say to take a look at.
Right. And would another thing to look at be, I know you said it produces this kind of numbness in you where nothing gets up to that dopamine hit that you get from watching porn. So if you're experiencing things, maybe you're on a vacation and you're just like, I just can't feel, this just doesn't feel that good as it
Yeah.
should. Is that another sign?
That's absolutely, Mitch. That's a great sign. And that's along the same lines as were there hobbies that you used to be interested in, did you love going out playing sports? Did you love going to the gym? Because that's usually the big one, because the gym is usually the one thing
Yeah.
people mostly say is, well, go to the gym and that'll help counteract it. Well, if
Yeah.
you lost motivation to go to the gym, whether it was writing, it could be, painting, photography, whatever any of your hobbies used to be, if you realize, yeah, I don't really have that. And for me, mine was, I was a huge Star Wars collector, a huge Star Wars fan. I used
Oh,
to be
yeah.
active in a
Yeah.
lot of Star Wars groups. Like, yeah, this shit's just not interesting anymore.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. And so it just got to the point where nothing was interesting. And the only thing that I kind of got addicted to was self-help, was
Yeah.
like trying to find all these veins. Now I'm addicted to this. Well, that's not working.
Right.
But that was it. Like, it wasn't fulfilling. So that's it. If you still feel unfulfilled in your life, but you've tried everything, that's usually the first sign to say, hey, let me tackle this piece of it. And not to say that that's going to be the cure all, because once you can clear that space, you might open yourself up to something else.
Right.
And
Right.
one of your other podcasts that you did was with Raymond Dorfel. I think it was the
Right.
No
Yes.
BS.
Yeah.
And he had a phrase in his is purpose being a distraction in your life,
Yeah.
which I found interesting, because my course and what I usually preach is purpose kills porn.
Love it.
And in the no fap world, there's a phrase that says porn kills love. And that is true in some sense. For me, porn killed intimacy, porn killed sex, it killed a lot of things. But I want to
Right.
approach this, okay, if it does that, what can I kill porn with?
Right. Right.
And I found it with almost any addiction is, once you can strive and get that level of purpose,
Yeah.
that's where you can start breaking the cycle. And in the beginning, it doesn't have to be your life's purpose. For me, the pain and numbness of doing nothing became way greater than anything that I figured I was going to have to do moving forward. Because what I realized is, since I'd opened myself to vulnerability, and I'd been rewarded in a couple relationships of intimacy with women.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I would say, why would you get married? Why would you want somebody there all the time where you can't get rid of them when you want to,
Right.
when you could be alone and have somebody there when you do want to? I mean, I could have
Right.
every argument in the world against it. But when I really realized what real intimacy with a woman was like, that's what I want moving forward. I want to have a partner in life. I don't want to keep going this route and be lonely. And when I realized that porn was not going to allow me to have the future I wanted, that's when I say, no more.
Love it. So
Yeah.
basically you built you built a purpose, or part of your purpose, around, porn not serving you in reaching that purpose.
Yeah.
Like, it was just something that absolutely was not in alignment with what you were driving towards each day.
Absolutely. It was a purpose of at the time, my purpose was, I want to have an amazing, successful, loving, sexual, intimate, passionate relationship. That was my purpose.
Yeah.
And then when I realized porn wasn't going to do it, alcohol wasn't going to do it.
Yeah.
And so as I got and started achieving those things, my purpose got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right. Right.
And so I was able to achieve that. But I will say, because once I got to that point, Mitch, I did realize, and this was March 21st, 2017. That was the last day I watched porn and masturbation. And immediately my life did start to change. I started feeling a little deeper connection with people, but, I started excelling at work. I started feeling closer to people. Depression was letting off. The brain fog was clearing. But as you mentioned in the intro, surprisingly is what happened was, other addictions for the first time in my life snuck in.
Right.
And it didn't just like happen. Opioids was the first one. How that started was I was in a car accident and blew out my shoulder and
Oh,
had two
okay.
back-to-back shoulder surgeries. And so I
Yep.
was given opioids, and man, it made me depressed. And that was a physical um, chemical addiction, meaning I tried to
Mm.
stop on a couple occasions cold turkey, ended
Yep.
up in the ER because I was
Wow.
vomiting and I was sick. So I had to work on a regimen with my primary care doctor to taper off of opioids. But I also use the same techniques that I use through getting off porn. And then after it took maybe about a month and a half to get off opioids, maybe 3 months after that, workload was extremely stressful. I was working on a TV show here in Colorado. I was also had my position as sales in a software company,
Yep.
and it was just, and we were out working on a documentary film. So
Wow.
extremely stressful, burning the candle at both ends. And of course, somebody in my life interest, hey, you should try some Coke. I'm like,
Oh,
no,
geez. Yeah.
absolutely not. I'm not going to
Right.
try
Right.
Coke. Well, then it got to the point that I was had a deadline and I couldn't get something done. I need to get it done. I
Ooh,
called this
yeah.
person up. I said, hey, you know what? Let me try a bump. And so I tried a bump. And as they say, the first line of cocaine is always the best. And man, it worked. It worked for a short period of time. And
Right.
but so all the techniques and skills that I've been learning along with porn, I was implementing and trying to, and it is now evolved into a program. But I realized I'm still not, again, I'm not cured. What is going on?
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so I realized, and I have a video on my YouTube channel called Passion. Passion is not your purpose. I can't remember the exact title of it, or
Mm.
no, don't follow your passion. And
Mm. Yeah.
and where I talk about like passions and addictions are almost the same side of a coin,
Mm.
meaning
Interesting.
addictions are going to fill that void in your life that stop you from your true purpose.
Right.
Passions can do the same thing.
Ah.
Passions can get in your way and distract you
So sorry,
from.
what do you mean by passions? Just like in a more specific context, like what would an example of be?
Yeah. So for the passions that I had in my life was I was a huge movie buff. I love going to
Oh,
movies.
yeah,
I loved writing about movies.
yeah,
I love movie reviews. I loved country dancing. That was a
right,
huge
right,
passion of mine. I would spend a lot of times teaching myself and learning and learning that on my own.
yeah,
So anything, and not to say that a passion can't turn into your life's purpose, but to clear the decks, what I found to really open up and find what your mission is in your life is you have to evaluate the good and the bad. You have to evaluate your passions and your addictions, because
gotcha.
both of them are holding up that space where your purpose lives and suppressing it. And that's
Yeah,
what I found interesting about that other podcast. Generally, is
yeah,
your purpose a distraction. At that point in time, I thought to myself, I think maybe in my terms, he's saying passion,
right,
because
right.
COVID was a big example of this, where you think you're living your life's purpose, but now you're stuck at home and your whole life has changed. And now you realize
Right.
your
You've
life at
lost a
home
lot of
is
those
shit.
passions. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Your relationship with your wife, your kids, and all that kind of stuff. Like, to
totally.
what
Yeah,
detriment was it?
yeah.
Um, and so really doing a self-evaluation with that. And so once I was just evaluating what's my next purpose, what is it, and what am I meant to do? And so kind of where it led up for me was, as I started understanding what this problem was and this challenge and this horrid addiction I had to porn and sex addiction, I had a lot of resentment towards it.
Mm,
I don't have regret. People always say, was it regretful?
interesting.
And maybe there's a definitive line between those two. To me, there is. To others, it might not be. But I never regretted the stuff I did. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot.
Yeah,
There's a lot of experiences that I can say I've had that would just blow people away. But it was resentful. In my 30s, I got to the point where, man, I really resent the fact that I did all these things.
mm,
But the second, when my grand purpose was, where I decided, and I walked away from my job January 2nd of this year to
mm,
follow this mission. It's not like, again, passion not being your purpose. I was not passionate about telling the world that I jerked off the porn and that it was a
right,
problem. There's no
right.
passion in that, but
Oh, yeah,
it became my calling and saying, I have my purpose is that I know how to get through this and I can help men through it.
yeah.
So that became my purpose. Um, and so when I had that epiphany, that resentment turned to gratitude, meaning I now have a gift and I am so thankful that I have an opportunity to serve the world in such a manner that I can really change people's lives.
Oh,
And the gratitude that I have around that now, that's where I get real emotional.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
wow, I can use this to reach out to people and give a roadmap to people and say,
Right.
you are
Right.
not alone, and
Yeah.
you don't have to spend decades trying to figure this out on your
Mm.
own.
Right. Oh, I love that. How you've found through this journey your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
also going back to, you said you weren't regretful about, what you
Yeah.
did during this time. You're resentful at the acts that you performed. And I just want to acknowledge that it's important distinction to be resentful at those acts that you perform, not
Yes.
resentful at yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that'd be a different story.
Wow, absolutely, Mitch. That really is, and that comes back to the vulnerability
Yep.
of really training your brain and accepting yourself, and you become, I guess, your own scientist of yourself. And if you can start disconnecting yourself from the acts and the actions and how you feel,
Yep.
and just again really be vulnerable, and you have to be honest with yourself. So many people have that need to be right and
Mm,
and have to prove themselves and hide. Allow yourself to be open, suppress that and eradicate that need to be right, and listen and learn and say, yeah, I don't know it all. And I
right. Yeah.
even to this day, by all means, I mean, I a lot of people might call me an expert in this, but I'll still say I'm on this journey because I'm still learning.
Right.
I'm
Right.
still learning
Always
all
learning.
about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And I was very good with myself to be able to find that confidence level. And that's what started to build from that. And
Mm,
so where that transformed and where it really eventually really showed up is it's amazing because I am now going back to the fact that as I said earlier, I would argue the fact that why would anybody ever want to get married or engaged or
mhm.
anything like that? Like what a trap, it's going to cost you money, all that kind of stuff. Well, fast forward to today, I am engaged to the most amazing woman in the world.
Right.
She and the world brought her to me because I was able to open this up and change my mindset around all of this.
Right.
And now I have this loving, amazing connection with somebody who is not judgmental, who understands. We grow, we learn together, we support each other. And it's just been such the transformation. So that's probably the biggest transformation, other than the fact that I mentioned, work took off. I was awarded 3 Emmys, the documentary film,
Awesome.
financial independence, all that stuff was byproduct.
Yeah.
But I achieved what that ultimate purpose was in the beginning, is having that amazing relationship with somebody
Right.
that
Right.
before I would argue against.
Right. Right. And man, that's so powerful. I think that, if you talk to anyone who's at a super high level, who's unstoppable in what they do, they're not just doing it because they have, say, LeBron James or someone. They're just not playing
Yeah.
basketball because they have fun playing basketball, because they're
Yeah.
passionate about it. It is so deeply intertwined with their purpose and like why they wake up every single day.
Yeah.
And when you have that, that's how you get to that level. That's how you're able to bring those things into your life, because there's no way they're not going to come into your life when you
Yeah.
have that laser focus.
Yeah, that's a point. And a lot of your podcasts are people talking about how to find your purpose, and that's what a lot of my teaching goes through, is find that purpose, because as you just mentioned, that purpose will pull you forward in life, as opposed to you every day just struggling and trying to get up. And that's what happens with passions, is every day it becomes work doing the things that you like to do.
Right.
But a passion is going to pull you forward. Now, I'm not going to lie, it's not every day. I wish I could say every day I gotta.
Yeah.
There's days
Totally.
that when you wake up and are like, what the fuck am I doing? Like nobody, I'm talking to a brick wall, and
Yeah.
nobody, I get maybe 10-second views on my videos that are 20 minutes long. Like nobody
Yeah.
cares about this. Nobody's listening. But that's, again, having a supportive group of people around you, and a person in your life that says, get your ass back up. And I am that person to a lot of people. That's what I am, a coach to many people. But it doesn't mean that we're not prone to it ourselves as coaches and mentors and educators. That we're humans too, and there's still those days where we have to do it, and then look at that purpose and say, what am I attempting to do here? What am I attempting to change the world with? And then I can eventually get out of that funk or whatever it is. So that's exactly what it does.
Love it. Yeah. And thank you for clarifying that it's not always you wake up and it's easy.
Yeah.
There's ups, there's downs, we're all human.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing a lot of coaches don't want to talk about. They want to talk about that they've got it all figured out and say, do this. The point that I think a lot of coaches should talk about is the distinction that the principles always work. Follow the principles, set them up, but it doesn't mean you're always cured and that you're not going to have those struggles every day. but it's
Yeah.
like, how are you going to kick yourself in the ass when those moments happen? It becomes a lot easier, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
But you're still going to have those moments of what they call imposter syndrome, or am I good enough, or am I really the right person to be doing this?
Yeah.
And every one of us has that in it. So a lot of my goal is, if I can teach men to overcome this and then become a mentor and be a beacon of light to other men in this, I mean, that would be a movement. And then that's what is nice. There's a lot of men out there that are doing this. And I've realized, God, thank God there are people talking about it, but there's not enough. I feel like the societal damage that is caused by porn, and back that up to a point where it's discerning to me that here in Western culture, even a lot of professionals in mental health professionals are saying that porn is good for you.
What?
Therefore, it becomes a harder battle to even fight. And they're saying it for all the reasons. I don't know if there's agendas behind it, or there's a lot of people that say porn can be healthy for you. And I'm like, show me to somebody where it is. I don't know. But I will say I gain a lot of my conversations land in the like India. India has a big problem with it, but the nice thing is in India, there's a stigma against how porn is bad for you, but there's a lot of men that still struggle for it.
Right.
But if I could just get people to understand and say, this is the journey, here's how it negatively affected my life in all areas of my life, and examine it in your own life. And if you're at that point, come to me and I'll help you get through it.
Oh, dude, I love what you're doing. I love your mission.
Thank you.
So I can't let you off the show without asking this. So I know we talked about how we know if it's an addiction. So say I'm now sitting at home, I'm listening, and I'm like, oh shit, I think I might have a problem here. Maybe it's not a full-on addiction, but I think I have a problem. It's affecting me in certain ways. We talked about that purpose is the killer of this. Aligning your purpose with, I want to have a life of intimacy. I want to have a partner, a loving partner who I'm able to open up with, be vulnerable with. But that, finding a purpose is a big, daunting topic. If I'm sitting at home right now and I'm like, what do I do today to to take a first step towards, getting more in balance and stepping away from this problem? What would you say to that person?
Yeah, the first one is go out and create action in some way that involves somebody else, where you're helping somebody else, and you start taking the onus off of yourself. And when you can start return, more times than not, you're going to feel validated and valued because you've helped somebody. But start building that self-value and reevaluating connection with people. That really is the first step. The other one is, and that seems a little bit more daunting, and I know a lot of people are like, how is that related? It is, trust me. You go out and provide value to somebody else in any way. If somebody's moving, volunteer to help them move, whatever it is. And then people will see value in you that you don't even see in yourself. The other one is, believe it or not, is really start learning and practicing gratitude.
Oh, love it. Yeah.
And gratitude has, I say there's 3 levels. And if people go to my YouTube channel, there's a video there which is called Take the Compliment. But the first level of gratitude is the basic that everybody says, is write down what you're grateful for on a daily basis. But that's where most people stop. They say, okay, this isn't working. I'm writing down that I've got my dog, my house, I'm healthy, I've got a job. But then the next level is going out to the world and showing gratitude towards others. And so if people do things, make sure you are thanking people, make sure you are letting people know that their life is valuable and their place in the world is valuable. And when you start doing that, you will build connection with people. They're going to be like, wow, man, this guy I have a connection with this person.
Right.
And then the last one, which is the tier 3, and where most people, I feel, just drop the ball, is take the compliment and receive gratitude. How do you receive gratitude? Most people, that's where they shut it down. If somebody comes to you and says, hey, thank you, or great job, and you're like, nah, this whole, hey, man, that's a great outfit. Nah, this whole thing, I threw it together. Or no, really, it was no big deal.
Like, let it land.
Accept it, because when you dismiss it, you're dismissing your own value. And the other thing that you're doing is you are robbing somebody else of the ability to give you something.
Ooh, yeah.
That's the same if somebody gives you a birthday present and you say, take it back. I don't want it.
Mm.
That's the same thing when
Same
you
thing.
shut down somebody's compliment and their gratitude towards you. Accept it, receive it. And so those are things where you can start maybe breaking that mind shift. The other is, just get online, start researching, watch videos of men like me that have gone through it, that tell you the horrific stories that they've had. And just start realizing and just opening that door of conversation of, this is a problem in my life. And then your brain, the nice thing about it is, like, where do you go from there? Once you accept that that's a problem, your brain will start finding solutions for you on your own, and it will be pulling you towards the right answers. And so you don't have to worry about figuring it all out up front. Find that one piece and just accept it. And your brain, it's the same conversation of people say, I'm such a horrible person. Why did this happen to me? Your brain's going to tell you why you're a horrible person and why it's happening to you. Or you say, God, this sucks. This happened to me, but what do I do? How can I get out of it? Your brain will answer that question. Your brain will answer whatever question you put in front of it, and it will validate it. So ask yourself the right questions. It's empowering to yourself and not creating a victim in yourself.
Oh, dude, love that. Yeah, the brain's an amazing thing, and it's amazing what it can do for us if we let it unleash its power. I love what your answer. We could talk about gratitude all day long, but before we just kind of rapid fire, I know we're almost out of time here, but a big part of this podcast is mindfulness and introducing men to mindfulness topics as well. I'm very, very quickly, I know after I meditate, there's no way in hell that I would ever think of looking at porn immediately after. Was mindfulness meditation a part of your journey?
Man, that's a fantastic question. And I talk about this in other aspects, but yes. And so the program that I've built is called the 7 Disciplines of Mastery to Transform Your Life and Stop Porn Forever.
Yeah.
And my program walks you through a very scientific aspect all the way to the end of finding purpose, and it's a spiritual track. So spirituality absolutely is number one, because my program will walk you through. You start off with the brain science, then you start off with self-discovery, then you start off with nutrition and body. But I talk about it in a way different way than just the standard nutrition and body. Then your mental well-being, like what you're talking through. So I go through this transition of science-based to spiritual. And then, so the next phase is going to be spirituality and then purpose. But spirituality, absolutely number one. And I don't talk about it or teach it in a religious sense, because there's a lot of religious, denominations that are out there of men that come to me. It affects everybody in the world.
Right.
I don't talk about it in terms of Christianity or Muslim or Hindu or anything like that. I just talk about it in a sense of connecting with the universe and yourself and what's out there. So that absolutely is probably the number one key that you have to learn self-discovery. And another reason I don't talk about it a whole lot up front is because, and since you've mentioned it as well, you understand when you start talking about people like, oh, here's a foo-foo kind of metaphysical kind of guy. Listen, I'm a white collar, hardworking guy. That just grew up in this, and I found this connection to spirituality, but that absolutely has to be a piece. And that's like step 3 or 4 that you have to get to if you realize you can't just step in. But that's where I go back to gratitude. Gratitude is the low rung of spirituality that you can start connecting with. Yeah. Thanks for asking about that. And I'm glad I'm glad I asked that.
That's huge. Yeah, that's huge. Okay, man, this is the final question. I ask every guest, answer as many or as little words as you want, but basically, if you could give one piece of advice to the version of yourself that was at the lowest point of your life, also known as rock bottom, what would that piece of advice be?
Man, it's probably the same answer everybody gives, but believe in yourself. Because that's the hardest one, that even some days is the hardest thing to do. But just believe in yourself and that you are worth it. That you absolutely are worth it, no matter what. Nobody on this planet is more or less than anybody else. So don't think that your voice doesn't have meaning or word, because you are worth it. Your future's worth it. The world needs you. The world needs a powerful you. The world needs an inspiring you. The world needs a confidence you. And in whatever you have to do to make sure you internalize that, and these feelings of self-doubt are natural, everybody has it. So that is a long-winded short answer.
Love it. So much there. We could talk about it all day, but we don't have
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
Okay, man, I know your YouTube channel is your main
Yep.
hub of your content. Where
Mm-hmm.
can our listeners audience go to find out more about what you, connect with you?
Yeah. That's perfect. Bill Ranshaw on YouTube. If you search my name, it's Bill Ranshaw, Ranshaw, and you'll find me. I change my page name occasionally. Right now, I think it's Bill Wilderman or NoFap or something, NoFap, something to that effect. But search my name, you'll see my picture on there. And on Facebook, I have an open Facebook group, which is Bill Wilderment, not B Will, but Bill. It's Bill Wilderment. Purpose over porn. And so you can find that, but just Google my name and you'll be able to find me and reach out through either Facebook or Instagram. My Instagram handle is nofap_Doyen, Doyen. And Doyen is a term meant leader and expert in the field. So, but Google my name. That's the best way.
Awesome. Google his name. He's everywhere. Purpose over porn. Love it. That's kind of the buzzword or buzz sentence from the episode. Man, thank you so much for doing this. I know you opened my eyes to a lot of what the effects of porn are in killing intimacy and killing purpose, and how purpose can kill is the antidote.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, my man. Really appreciate it.
You're awesome. Thank you for your content and everything you're doing, man.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll keep in touch, my man.